AP and I made a huge scene of mocking my husband at our friend's pre-wedding party, and then I never imagined that my first time on Reddit would be to seek advice on my broken marriage and what to do with my vengeful husband. My desire to have risky fun and mock my marriage has left me in the worst possible situation. My AP and I made a huge scene of mocking my husband at our friend's pre-wedding party, and in return, my husband acted out of spite and ruined my image in front of over 150 people. I do not think I can ever recover from what that man has done to me. But do you know what might be worse? What my AP and I did to him? It was not planned by my AP, but it was definitely embarrassing, and my husband didn't take it lightly at all. Please, I do not want to be told that I had this coming. Since when did a little bit of fun have to be so consequential? Just like my username displays, I wish to be called Miley. I'm 30 years old and I have been married for just 3 years. My husband, however, is 2 years younger than me. He is an entrepreneur and I am a baker. The age difference between Darian, my husband, and I is the main reason I married him, to be honest. I wanted to marry a man I could control and wrap under my finger because I didn't want to be controlled. I met Darian from our friend group years ago. We were just friends before it casually turned into a relationship that led to marriage. I had eyes for someone else in the group, but I didn't date him because I felt like he was too controlling and irrational. Apart from his behavior, my friends never liked him. Of course, even in the friend group, we had cliques, and my clique wasn't his biggest fan. I thought it was just jealousy at first because, to be honest, he's kind of living fine, but I then discovered that there might be more to it. His name is Fred, by the way. And even though a lot of the men were threatened by him, they couldn't say otherwise because he literally paid for all our trips. But after my marriage to Darian, my crush for Fred didn't go away. Of course, I felt nothing for him during the early weeks of my marriage because I was still stuck on the honeymoon vibes. That is until 1 year after my marriage when we met again. Darian and I decided to see our friends after a long time, and we went to a club to see them. Fred and I always flirted with each other before, and it almost became a problem when I started dating Darian, but I made him understand that there was nothing between Fred and I. Darian believed me after he noticed the distance I gave Fred, and that's how that scandal didn't live to see the light of day. But when I met Fred at the club, I knew there was going to be trouble in my marriage. Don't get me wrong, marriage with Darian isn't bad. The only problem is that no matter how okay our marriage was, I kept thinking about Fred whenever I saw him. I wrote it off as a normal crush at first, but with time I began to understand that it was starting to be lust. Darian has always been a reserved, hardworking, and normal guy. He's what girls would describe as a safe option, and that's why I went for him. He's respectful and reasonable and doesn't disrespect me. I chose him because I thought I could live easily with him. But then I discovered that even with my marriage to Darian, I couldn't stop thinking about Fred, and that's where the problem began. Now Fred is my biggest nightmare, and I am more scared of him and the thought of ever having anything to do with him. Back then, it was even harder to keep my feelings a secret considering the fact that we were all in the same friend group. Fred, on the other hand, didn't care that I was married and needed boundaries. He kept stealing glances at me and flirting once in a while. Well, in his defense, I didn't do anything to stop him from flirting. Instead, all I did was encourage him and give him green lights. At first, I thought that it was just harmlessly fun, but I had no idea that the risky, flirtatious gestures were getting noticed by a lot of people. I had no idea that with each boundary I crossed with Fred, my marriage suffered a painful blow. I managed to keep things platonic until our second wedding anniversary, where I discovered that Darian had been harboring a lot of questions. He was very confrontational that day when he asked me if I was aware that people were whispering behind our backs. Of course, I already knew that, so I tried to gaslight him and make it seem as though he was exaggerating. But I didn't get the reaction I expected out of him. He didn't find my actions funny at all. Instead, Darian made it clear that he would not tolerate any form of cheating or disrespect. I will not lie, guys. I was deeply shocked. I had never been on the receiving end of Darian's anger until that day. I never expected the level of rage he showed. When I saw how he reacted, I knew that it was a sign to take a step back and not play with him. Even though I was already smitten with lust for Fred at that stage, I knew that I would choose my marriage over him. The truth is that no matter how much one wants to cheat, your rational mind still tries to save you. I knew that Fred wasn't ready to commit and that risking my marriage for him would just be stupid. But that didn't stop me from flirting with him. It just made me smarter at it. I didn't want to stop, but I also didn't want to be caught. The truth is that there was nothing missing in my marriage except from the lust and risk that flirting with Fred gave. Darian has never been a bad husband. To be honest, I think his only fault is the fact that he is too kind. I did play with his trust, and I will not lie about that. That is why I didn't expect him to suddenly turn on me and deal with me so mercilessly. Now please don't get this mixed up. I never actually slept with Fred until 6 months ago. We did flirt once in a while, but it never really got to that intimate part until one particular night. To be honest, I thought I was so smart and discreet with my movements. That's why I delayed the intimate part for so long. I wanted it to happen so naturally that we weren't socially awkward after it and it didn't raise suspicious. I also wanted to make sure that Fred was worth it. Believe me or not, I did care. Even though I had been filled with lust, I still had a working head that questioned what I was doing. Eventually, Fred and I finally slept together for the first time. I didn't expect it to have any effect on my marriage, but it did. Darian definitely suspected something wasn't right. I don't know if it was the way I acted with him, or if it was the way I was being discreet. I could tell that he had his suspicions, but the thing is that he never confronted me about it. One thing about Darian is that he likes to be sure before he acts. And Jay think that's what went down in our marriage. I noticed that he withdrew a lot and stopped being a gentleman precisely. There was just this weird aura and weird behavior he gave off. He stopped getting me gifts and stopped putting in effort in our date nights and couple conversations. In fact, let me out it simply that he stopped caring. It was almost like I was the one who started chasing him in the relationship and not the other way around. We were living in the same house, but there wasn't that spark to it. If you're wondering why I cared, then you just be joking. When I decided to cheat, I didn't cheat because I wanted to end my marriage. I just cheated because I needed the fun and risky feeling. Fred was just a phase for me, a few minutes pleasure whenever we met. I still wanted to feel married and happy, so when I didn't have that, I panicked. I panicked and decided to speak to Darian about it. I asked him if there was a problem, and I did it so confidently that I didn't expect the turnaround of events. I went to him thinking I would come out of the conversation as the winner, but instead Darian shocked me. I'm fact, GE threatened me. He told me that he had been hearing a lot of side talks about me, but was taking his time to find the truth. He then proceeded to warn me not to dare cross him or try to play smart with him. I was so scared that I ran to Fred the next day to tell him everything. I expected Fred to just casually tell me not to worry, and that he would be by my side if I eventually ended my marriage with Darian. But all he said was that there was no need to be scared, and that Darian was just being immature. Fred made me believe that there was no need to take Darian seriously. Now that I think about it, the joke was on Fred because I think both of us now know what Darian is capable of. I also think that I was the biggest fool for underestimating my husband. I guess I kept referencing to our 2 years ago GSP, and that made me feel superior in some way. I completely forgot that a man will always be a man even if you were born 2 years earlier than him. Darian always suspected something was up and he knew I wasn't to be trusted. And so instead of sitting back and doing nothing, he waited for the right time to mess me up. He did, and I'll just say this simply. He messed me up real bad. So you might want to ask, what are you even talking about? How did he mess you up? Well, it all started from our friend's pre-wedding party. Just 3 weeks ago, we got a wedding invite from a very good friend of ours. It was arranged to be a 5-day experience with various events lined up until the main wedding. Just like I said, the invite came from a very good friend of ours, so there was no way we were going to say no. Of course, we were busy with work and we're still trying to have a normal marriage, but we squeezed in time somewhere in between. From the get-go, I knew it was going to be a very bad idea. Destination wedding in New York? What could go wrong? A lot of things. I just knew that it wouldn't end well, especially because Fred would be in attendance. We were all in the same friend group, so there was no party without either one of us. There were signs of how dreadful things could become, but I was too stupid to notice it or even take a smart step. Can you believe that a night before we traveled, Darian sat me down and warned me against any form of disrespect? I got upset and asked him what he was insinuating, and he simply told me this: "Do not dare try to make a fool of me in front of anyone, or else you will regret marrying me." I got very offended, but I refused to be dramatic. I just played along because at that point, I was in need of the vacation, and I felt like I would burst of boredom if I didn't go for the wedding. Of course, Darian was paying for the trip, so the last thing in my list was to disrespect him. When we got to New York and checked into the hotel, I sneaked out one night to tell Fred about Darian's threat. It wasn't something I planned for. I was just so bored that it slipped out. I didn't expect Fred to do anything. It was just something I put out there for no reason. But obviously my delusion and lack of awareness for my environment was what made me so out of touch with reality. I mean, what was I even expecting? That's what I think about now that I look back at everything. It is common knowledge that men have huge egos and do not like to be seen as small or incapable. What they hate more is being belittled by another man. I had no idea that Fred's huge ego would lead him to making a fool out of the both of us. He didn't show that he wanted to embarrass Darian, but I could tell that he didn't like the fact that Darian's words had an impact on me. I mean, common. Of course I feared Darian a little, but that happened to be something Fred hated. He didn't like that I took Darian seriously, so he decided to make a fool out of Darian instead. You might also want to ask, how did he do that? Well, he did that by using me, of course, and I fell into the trap like a common rat. Out of the 5 days of wedding events, there was a pre-wedding party that was organized on the third day. Darian and I had attended the first 2 days' events together, and there was no drama. That's mostly because I earned Fred not TK try anything funny. But on the day of the pre-wedding party, Fred asked me to come see him at the restroom. It was risky, but I sneaked into the restroom to see him. He told me he missed me and asked me to dance with him that night. I already had a few drinks by then, so I was tipsy and excited. I agreed to dance with him and did just that. Not in a million years did I think that Fred had any ulterior motive behind that dance request. But he did. He had attached something to my collar while we were making out in the restroom, but I paid no attention to it. When I asked, he said it was nothing. Like I said, I was tipsy, so I didn't care. I danced with Fred and didn't bother looking for Darian. I didn't even bother checking to see if he was watching. The dance started off innocent, but then Darian started touching too much, and then he was basically groping me. I didn't do anything to stop him. I had no idea that we had gathered a crowd and that all eyes were on us, including Darian. But out of nowhere, Fred started talking about Darian. He called him weak and dramatic and insinuated that he wasn't man enough. I foolishly agreed and dissed Darian. Well, that was until I discovered that something was off. A few seconds into the conversation, I noticed that the music stopped. Most people stopped dancing and I could hear my voice. No, I know it's not weird to hear one's voice, but I heard mine too loudly. It took me a minute, if just standing there blankly like a fool, to realize that our conversation was heard by everyone in the room. How? Well, that's Fred had attached a mic to both of us. I was still tipsy, but I knew something was off. I decided to touch my neck and take it off, but it was too late. The damage had already been done. Before I could blink, I felt water all over my body. I fell on the floor due to the shock. While I was trying to understand what was going on, I realized that Darian and Fred were practically punching each other. I screamed because that was all I could do at that moment. No one cared about my state of distress or even offered to pull me off the floor. No one in our friend group even tried to help me. I could understand that the couple were upset that we were causing a scene, but what of the rest? It was extremely embarrassing. I got to my feet and tried to tell them to stop, but instead they pushed me on the floor. Finally, I got fed up and tried to leave, but that's when the drama came. I got the shock of my life when police officers walked into the hall and walked right towards us. By that time, Darian had stepped away from Fred and acted like the both of them weren't just involved in a tussle. I can still remember the words clear. "You are under arrest." I swear I laughed, because of course I couldn't believe it. Fred was the rational one who asked why, because the officers faced both of us. Nothing in the world prepared me for this statement. Possession of drugs. Yes, I know you had to read that again. I also had to do a double take. I do not take drugs, hell, I've only had 2 smokes in my life and I hated it. So to be in a new state and be told that I was under arrest for the possession of drugs was bluff. But no kidding, it was true. I was actually handcuffed along with Fred. I kept screaming and asking what was going on, but no one answered. Believe me, guys, it was the worst day of my life. I was deeply embarrassed and ashamed of myself. Not only was I standing there in a soaked dress, ruined makeup, and bruised hand from falling and hanging to witness people give me dirty looks, I was handcuffed in front of 150 people. In that situation, my survival instincts made me beg Darian for help. I shamelessly kept on uttering words like, "Darian, help. You know I do not use drugs, Jay didn't even smoke, help me." But all I said went on deaf ears and Darian acted like he didn't even know me. I wasn't even given time to change into something better. I was just dragged away like a criminal. Of course, the rules were Hatcher. We were in a foreign state with nobody to help. For me, my husband would have been the best person to help. But how could he help me when I made a fool out of him in front of too many people? Well, after we fit to the station, more tea was spilled. Can you believe that the person who called the cops, or rather, the person who gave the cops hint, was Darian? Yes, he was the one who caused the drama. That was his own revenge, and dare I say that he got me badly. The whole event made me realize that I didn't actually know who Fred was. I knew he smoked and all, but I didn't know he used drugs. Okay, I won't lie. I'd noticed some odd behavior, but I brushed rational thoughts away and found those bad vibes addictive and bad boyish. I liked the risky vibe, but it landed me in deep trouble. Fred got a lawyer to defend us, and it was through that lawyer that we finally got some reasonable explanation as to why we got arrested. First of all, at that moment, I was extremely angry at Fred. I am still livid, but I had to pretend to be okay. I didn't have money to call a lawyer, he did, so I just had to play along. It took me by surprise when I discovered that Fred had purchased drugs from someone in New York when he came, and Darian had used that as an opportunity to bring him down. Can you believe that almost everyone was aware that Fred was a drug user except me? Or maybe I was just too smitten by him to notice. It finally made sense, and I understood why most of my friends warned me to stay away from him even before I got married. The source of his wealth and extravagant spending never made sense, but it finally did. So Darian was aware too, but he refused to tell me because he wanted to teach me a lesson. He used this information to keep an eye on Fred, and finally, he got Fred badly. If you're wondering why I got arrested, they claimed that I was suspected to have purchased it with him, but honestly, I know that's Darian's doing. I was eventually released and I literally ran away. I took the next flight back home. Fred, on the other hand, was charged to court, but his lawyer later settled and he had to pay a huge fine. I clicked his number immediately because there was no way I wanted to have anything to do with an addict. But I came back home to chaos because my belongings were waiting for me in the garage. I tried to speak with Darian, but he refused to listen. Can you believe that? Darian acted rashly, if you ask me. What could have possibly made him go that far? He could have just warned me about Fred's addiction. Why did he have to put me through hell? As if the humiliation was not enough, he sent me out of the house knowing fully well that I had nowhere to do. Our friend group was still in New York for the after-wedding activities, and they were all so angry that no one even picked my call because of the scene I caused. Like I was the only one who caused drama. I need help on what to do because I'm sure Darian's next step is divorce, and that would completely break me beyond repair. Update. 4 months later, and I'm here with an update. No advice was able to save my marriage. But to be fair, you all only lashed out. No one actually tried to help me. Anyway, I was served divorce papers and I signed them because I didn't want any more embarrassment. I actually became a meme on our WhatsApp group chat because people recorded me on the floor. The whole incident made me know why true friends. Of course, I exited the group and ran back to my parents. They hate me right now, but they can't kick me out either. A part of me tried to settle with Fred, but my parents talked sense into me. Number one, he set me up with that Mike thing. He ruined my marriage and caused all this. Number two, I don't know if he's even a sane person. What if he decides to hit me one day and blakes it on substance? And then number three, he's never shown interest in commitment. So I guess I did end up risking my marriage for a few minutes of pleasure and useless fun. Darian never forgave me for making fun of him, and his revenge still haunts me till this day. I never thought I would get caught, but what's even worse is that I never thought the weight of my actions would crush me this hard.
My husband has been ignoring me consistently, and I'm tired of it. What kind of man thinks it's okay to marry a wife, then act like you don't know her? He doesn't give me attention at all, and it's honestly making me very angry. I'm tired of fighting for my husband's attention and trying to make him finally pay attention to me. I don't think that's the normal way to live at all, and it's so annoying. I practically ran here to Reddit today because I'm tired of acting like a pick-me-up girl with my own husband. I thought marriages were supposed to take the effort of both partners. Why am I the one putting in 90% effort while my husband just lays back and ignores me? I literally fight for his attention every single day. It's hard living that kind of life, and it's the most mentally draining thing ever. I'm slowly making up my mind to do something that's going to have consequences. He's pushing me, and I know that when I make that decision, none of us will ever recover from it. My name is Tiana, and I'm a 29-year-old woman from Washington, D.C. I've been married to my husband Spencer for the past 1 year and a half. He's 30 years old, and I thought he was the best thing that happened to me for a very long time. Spencer and I dated for 2 years before we got married to each other. We met at the fundraiser for an event, and that was how we just started off as friends. I liked his personality a lot, and I liked the fact that he was a very jovial person. I'm also a very jovial person who is very interested in social activities, and that is why I was drawn to him. Our relationship was really okay, and we had the best time together. That's why we started taking things seriously, and then Heck proposed. I think the problem started from the first week of our marriage. The problem started that early, and it has taken a lot of patience for me to endure everything. Let me just put it this way, without me mincing any words. My husband is a family man, and he is very close to his family. Normally, that is not supposed to be a problem, but in my situation, it is a very big problem. I don't think marrying a family man is really the best decision I made, and I am still regretting it to this day. I get that he was close to his family before he met me, and it is supposed to be that way, but there are certain boundaries you have to draw once you get married. You don't just suddenly decide to get married and then you make your wife feel like she has to scramble and fight for your attention. It's not a competition, and even though it was, your wife is not supposed to be involved in any competition for your attention at all. I'm honestly sick and tired of the unnecessary jabs his family throws at me just because they feel like he is closer to them than me. I get that they were with him for years before he met me, but hold on. Isn't the wife supposed to be the first priority of her husband in the marriage? I don't get why that should ever be a question, or why his family members should come to our house and stay over for weeks. I am not even exaggerating when I say that they come to our house and stay over for as long as they want. My husband owns a very big house, and he lived in the house even before he met him. There are many rooms, and I can even tell that the house was initially supposed to be a family house. I don't know why a single man would have that many rooms. When I asked him, he just told me that he made the house big enough so that his family members can come and sleep over anytime. At first, I didn't see it as a big deal because I thought it was normal for family members to come visit once in a while. But that is it. Family members are only to come and visit once in a while. I don't get why they are coming to visit literally every 2 months and then they stay for almost a month. You guys need to see how I am typing on this keyboard with a lot of anger. I am practically fuming and pressing the keys furiously because it just doesn't make sense that my husband would let his sisters stay at our own house for almost 1 month. I mean, if they just stayed and didn't cause any trouble, I would not have a problem with it, but oh no. Have I told you guys about his sisters? They act like they are coming to seek their boyfriend, and they have every right to litter the house. There was even a time when one of his sisters brought her boyfriend to come visit. They have no respect for me, and they have no regard. I come from a very respectful family, and in our family, it is very important that boundaries are drawn. My parents even feel bad to stay the night when they visit. I beg them to come over sometimes, but they want to respect boundaries. I'm not trying to say he should not be close to his family members, but please, let the boundaries and lines stay drawn. I don't get why his sisters act like they are the ones married to my own husband. Let me also talk about how my husband completely ignores me when they are around. It's not like I'm exaggerating or saying he doesn't speak to me. He speaks to me, but the problem is that he doesn't act like we're a normal couple in front of his family. When they are gone, I get back his full attention, but he barely acknowledges me in front of them. I can't make jokes or even miss my husband in our own home, as far as his siblings are watching, or his mother is in the living room. They smile and act like they like me in his presence, but when he's not around, it's a different story. I've had to endure all these for 1.5 years, and I'm tired. He's not home as much as I am, so he doesn't understand anything I'm going through. I also have my work, but when they are around, I find it hard to go to work and leave my house to them. They touch everything they see. And I've tried talking to my husband about it, but it seems like me bringing up the topic just annoys him. He brushed it off, then asked me a very stupid question like, "Don't you like my family?" A yes or no question. What am I supposed to say? No? It's almost like he's suppressing me. So that's why I've decided to take a step back and continuously think of what I'm going to do. I have decided to share my story on Reddit and get proper advice because I've seen how other people come here to ask for advice. I'm not ready to just sit back and let him and his family trample over me. I met a man, and I want him to act like my husband. If he's not ready to do that, then I might look elsewhere. I don't care what he says or thinks, but it's not right to isolate your wife no matter the excuse you think you have for doing that. Update. I cheated on my husband. I did it, and I know you all warned me, but guess what? It's been a lot of red flags from Spencer. I am currently on a trip right now, and you guys would not believe what is going on now. I decided to have some time alone with my husband so I could truly, fully decide where he stands and what he is actually up to. When I made my last update, many of you stated that I was being too fast in my judgment and thinking too fast. Some people also said that they fully supported whatever I had to do because they could relate to my situation one way or another. To be sincere, I'm still glad that many people decided to read my story and give their various opinions. I never expected Spencer to turn out this way at all. He's almost acting like someone entirely different. I don't want to be married to someone I don't know and someone who is playing hard to get. Most people are trying to make this about me and act like I am the one being difficult. I got a lot of people asking me if I don't have any conscience for even thinking about cheating on my husband. I don't think those people understand that it is always the person who wears the shoe that goes through the problems. I'm not ready to be that person that lets anyone trample all over her. Even after what you all said, and I did not agree with most of the comments, I decided to give it a try and actually have some alone time with my husband. About 2 weeks ago, I told him that I would be planning a getaway for just the two of us. I told him 1 week ahead of time so he would have enough time to plan whatever he wanted to do. Spencer agreed, and he told me that he would have enough time to go on the trip with me. It was the first time since many years after our marriage that we got time together. I didn't actually expect him to say yes at first, so when he said yes, I made a lot of plans to make sure that everything was perfect. I was actually daydreaming and thinking that I was finally going to get my husband back. And now that I think about it, I think it was very weird that I as a woman would need to be happy just because I would have a little bit of time with my husband. It's supposed to be a normal thing, and there's no need for me to be so excited. But the situation is different, and I am literally sharing my husband with the whole of his family, so it is quite difficult to get his attention. I prepared everything, and when it was 2 days to the trip, I started buying some things and bringing them to the house so that we would not need to waste a lot of time shopping on the road. During one of my shopping sprees, one of Spencer's sisters who was at the house noticed that I had been buying stuff and keeping it in our room. I didn't think it was a big deal, and I didn't think I had any reason to hide any of what I was buying for my own house from them. But she went to go talk to the rest of her siblings after figuring out that we were going on a trip, and some hours before our trip 2 days later, they showed up at the house. Spencer was not at home by that time because he went to get something last minute. His mother actually walked up to me to ask me why I was making her son take decisions without consulting her. I am not even trying to mince words here, Reddit. It's the absolute truth, and I was very surprised when I heard her say those words. I asked her what she meant by that, and she told me that I was making Spencer go on a trip without telling her first. It was at that moment that I realized that I got married to a mommy's boy. Why would his mother feel it was okay for her to ask me why we were going on a business trip without telling her first? What difference does it make, and how is it any of her business? I didn't even know what to say to her because I did not want to end up disrespecting her. I just waited for Spencer to come back and take care of the situation. When Spencer came back, she spoke to him much more nicely than she spoke to me. It was like she was trying to poke me behind him and then get a reaction out of me in front of him. I have heard a lot about evil mother-in-laws, but I never thought I would end up in a similar situation. Her audacity was just too much. She didn't even directly tell Spencer she was upset. She just beat around the bush continuously, and then that was all. Spencer and I ended up going to the airport almost 30 minutes late because his mother had to say unnecessary things and give unnecessary advice. I didn't let her negative energy stop me from trying to put effort into the trip. I tried my best to keep a positive attitude and not soil the mood because of his mother. Spencer was like a different man after we got to the hotel. He was back to acting like the man I used to know. I was very happy to have him back, and I honestly wanted to update you all immediately. I wanted to let Reddit know that their advice worked, and he was finally talking to me again. I was like a girl in a toy shop. I don't really know how the story goes, so let's leave it that way, lol. During the trip, we went to several places and did a lot of fun things. We're still at the hotel, and we're only to leave in 1 week's time. Everything started out great, to be honest, and I had nothing to fault. It felt like a breath of fresh air to be away from Spencer's family for that long. Because I wanted to save marriage and have a clean conscience, I decided to have another conversation with Spencer. Listen, my husband is great when he is not around his family. He's the definition of sweet, and he's the husband I knew before getting married. But once he's in front of his family, he tries to put on this hard demeanor. I wanted to speak to him about that because it makes no sense for a man to do that to his wife. I get that some men want to make their family believe that they have a mind of their own and don't always listen to their wives. It's a normal thing among men, and I know this because I've heard many stories about it and have even seen some evidence before. I decided to have a conversation with Spencer, and I planned on clearing up everything. I told him about my displeasure with his family coming over almost every day. Spencer was really shocked when I said that, and he did not even try to hide his displeasure. I couldn't understand why he had to pick up a fight with me just because I was not happy with his family. I didn't even try to sugarcoat anything, and I told him that his sisters were getting on my nerves. I don't know if it was his male ego trying to take over or just his love for his family, but he was not even ready to listen to me. He kept putting words in my mouth and trying to make it seem like I was the one being difficult. Just like he always did, he tried to use those yes or no questions to discourage me. But I was not ready to be discouraged, and I made sure that I did not stutter when I told him that I did not plan on sharing him with his family. It was a very complicated conversation, and I even began to regret taking up the conversation in the first place. At some point, I got up and tried to walk out, and that was when Spencer asked me to just sit and listen to me. He began to say things like he was sorry for inconveniencing me, and that he was just a man who was very close to his family. So I tried to make him understand that I did not have a problem with him being close to his family, and that I just had a problem with his family, trying their best to come in between me and him. I don't know why he finds it hard to understand such simple things, and why he always tries to guilt trip me and make me feel like I was bringing up unnecessary problems. It was almost like every single time I brought up a conversation, the same pattern always happened, and we ended up going nowhere in the conversation. I never realized that I would have to choose my words before speaking to my own husband. Even though the memory of everything that happened sickens me and makes me very angry, I'm just super happy that I made sure I left no stone unturned and tried my best. At least I would have enough evidence to show to anyone that dared and tried to judge me. When Spencer noticed that I was very angry and did not really want to continue the conversation, he decided to try his best and calm me down by making up excuses. He asked me to tell him exactly what his family did that continued to piss me up. I did not blame him for asking me that because I was very well aware that his family never showed their other side in his presence. They always reserved their shady side for me and treated me in a cold way when he was around. That had been the pattern for a long time, and I wanted to be a virtuous wife and just keep quiet and endure like every other woman did. But I discovered that the more I tried to make peace and just ignore any arguments, the more they tried to poke me and get a reaction out of me. If not even my own parents felt comfortable coming to my house and discomforting us. I don't get why his family should think that the house was their second home. I was so serious that I spoke to Spencer in such a harsh tone that he had to understand that I was not joking. He apologized immediately and told me that was just being protective of his family. I told him that didn't make sense and that I was supposed to be his first priority when it came to being protective. I made sure he understood that I was also someone's family, and they transferred all their responsibility to him. I made him understand that he had to step up. Spencer did not like my time because I was speaking very harshly, and I don't deny that. I had to calm down because I was really upset. He told me he understood what I was saying, and that even though I'd been overacting, he was going to try his best to make sure his family drew some boundaries. His words calmed me down a lot, and I finally told him that all I'd wanted was for him to see things from my own point of view. It's that simple, right? I also told him that I hated the fact that I have to practically plead for his attention. He tried to deny that being true, but I gave him so many instances that he had to accept my claims. That's pretty much how the conversation ended, and for the first time ever, I'd believed that we made progress in our couple conversations. It was the first time that happened in a very long time, and I didn't take it for granted at all. So it's surprising for me to realize that everything I said to my husband literally entered one ear and left through the next. He has decided to do exactly what I asked him not to do. I've tried my best, and at this point I'm honestly done. I no longer have a conscience because it's outrageous at this point. No one has a right to blame me at all. What kind of situation have I found myself in? I came on this trip and planned it because I needed time together with Spencer. But right now, it seems like Spencer is not interested in having the same time alone with me. If you all are wondering why I'm being this angry, I'll be more than glad to let you all know the messed up things Spencer did recently that just drove me over the edge. We went to the beach together, and I put on my brand new bikini. That was just barely 2 days after we had the very important conversation. I thought I'd spoken some sense into Spencer, and he was going to listen to me and try to do his best in our marriage. He seemed to comply, but he decided to do something crazy at the beach. I had my bikini on, and I even put on my sunscreen and everything. Lol. It's a big deal because I hardly ever try to do all those things because I don't have time to go to beaches. But I had to put in an effort because I wanted to get back to the way Spencer and I had a fun marriage and relationship. We had drinks, and we even had some tacos that I'd made earlier that day. It was supposed to be a fun day with a lot of minimal stress and barely any work. We agreed to switch off our phones and just focus on ourselves because we really needed that kind of vibe. I didn't think twice before switching off my phone because I didn't think anything was more important than bonding with my husband. I ain't even lying to you guys. I tried to make some flirty moves and just act crazy with him. He's my husband after all. So I didn't feel shy or embarrassed at all. Like I said, I've always been a jovial person, and I'm the type to do entertaining things and just have fun in every situation no matter what. That was just me being me. But Spencer decided to break the deal. He didn't switch off his phone after telling me that he did. He lied. Okay, if it has been a work calm that pooped up. If not, have a problem with it. He has a right to work, and his work earns him money. They were even kind enough to grant his sudden leave request. But I think the reason is because he hardly requests any leave from work at all. But in that situation, it was not a work call at all. It was a personal call, and can you guys get who it was from? His mother. Yes, his mother called him while we were busy on a getaway trip. I mean, the whole point of a getaway trip is to drop all the stress behind and just loosen up. I don't care what anyone says. I'm really calling his mother stress, because that woman has stressed me out in too many ways. When Spencer picked up the call and I found out it was his mother that called. I was very pissed off, but I tried my best to contain my anger. I didn't want to end up being that woman that just couldn't control herself. I wanted to listen to what she had to say first in case she had any important thing to discuss with him. There was nothing important at all. She just called because a close relative of theirs was in the same city we were in, and she needed Spencer to pick that person up and lodge a hotel for that person. I thought I was hearing things and that Spencer was just trying to pull my leg. But no, his mother really requested that of him. What kind of a woman requests that from her son when she knows fully well that he is busy with his wife? It was a very dumb request, and it made no sense because she knew that we had gone on a trip together. If we hadn't been on a trip, where would that relative go? The coincidence was just too much, and something told me that they had planned it. Why else would a relative suddenly visit the same city we were in? Even if it was purely coincidental and it was not planned, what business do we have with the relative that came to the city? Couldn't the relative find their way and do something on their own? Why travel to a city you know nothing about and then expect someone to come and babysit you and carry you around? At first, I was very pissed and I tried to laugh off the anger I felt with Spencer. I tried to make up jokes and pretend like I was not really angry. That was because I didn't really expect Spencer to get up and tell me that he was going to pick up the relative. When he said that to me, it was honestly like he was from another planet and was trying to deceive me. But first, I was actually serious, and he grabbed his wallet and started preparing to leave. The man I married wanted to ditch me for a relative. It was not the best situation to be in, and I watched him like a hawk watching its prey. Why would Spencer think it was okay to just decide to leave me at a beach and try to go and make a relative comfortable? Even after all the conversations I had with him about me not liking the fact that I was sharing my husband with his family members, he still did the exact same thing I told him I did not like. I actually waited at that pool thinking that Spencer would run back and tell me he was just joking. That's just how confused and surprised I had been. Apart from being in a state of shock, I was actually very embarrassed. I started asking myself questions that I never thought I'd ask myself. I had to ask myself if my husband found some relative I didn't even know more important than me, his own wife. I did not like that at all, and it took me several minutes to get my thoughts together and decide the next step. I was so embarrassed because some people at the beach saw how he practically stood up and walked away, and I had been calling after him, but he didn't look back once. It had to be one of the most embarrassing moments of my life. It was a very weird kind of situation because I realized that I was not a priority to Spencer at all. It just meant that I did not matter to him, and he did not give me attention. He wanted me to beg for his attention and have to wait in line. I was not ready to live that kind of life and be that kind of person. I can't even describe how angry I had been that day. I was very upset, and I think I was even fuming. I did not bother parking the drinks and food we got. I just grabbed my purse and stormed out of the beach. Even though I knew people were looking at me because of the way I was grumbling, I did not care to look back because I knew that it was not going to get me anywhere. I went back to the hotel room and waited for Spencer for over 3 hours. Yet, he did not come out. I got tired of waiting, and I was also very angry. I got dressed and left the hotel room that same night. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, but I knew that I wanted to make sure I upsetted Spencer in a very harsh way. I did not underestimate my abilities to do exactly what I set my mind to, and in less than 4 hours of staying out and about, I had a one-night stand with a random guy. He wasn't really random because I recognized him as someone that went to the same college I went to. He was the one that worked up to me and asked me if I still remembered him. I did remember him, and that's how we started a conversation, and then it happened. I did not feel guilty at all when I woke up the next morning. My anger did not let me feel any guilt, and even now, as I write this, I don't feel any guilt at all. If a person, and especially a wife, has to constantly demand her husband's attention and respect, there is nothing to feel guilty about when she decides to look elsewhere. I'm also a human being, and I have feelings that can be hurt too. I don't think it's right at all for Spencer to ditch his own wife. Well, Spencer ditched me, and I ditched him too, so it was a two-way thing. No, I'm not sorry for doing that to Spencer, and if I have my way, I would honestly do it again. I don't think Spencer even knows or even cares. He's too busy trying to be the perfect son and staying under his family's control. I don't need that for my life, and I've tried to be that virtuous, kind woman for 1.5 years, and it has gotten me nowhere. The more I tolerated, the more disrespect I got. It was like a circle that kept on repeating itself, and Spencer didn't care less. So let me tell you guys what happened after I left the guy's house. I don't want to reveal his name because it's really nothing serious, and it was just a one-night stand. When I got back to the hotel room that day, I met Spencer at the hotel. He looked very angry, and then he asked me where I had been all night. I ignored him all throughout his rants, and I just went to freshen up in the toilet. Spencer got so angry that he came to stand in my way. I tried ignoring him because I did not want to have any conversation that would make me say hurtful things to him. I knew that our marriage was literally over, and there was no saving it at all. I didn't even want to save a marriage that never had any form of respect for me. Maybe that's why I don't regret cheating on him. I realized that I also deserve to be happy, and that I don't want to spend my life chasing after someone that doesn't respect me. Marriage is not supposed to consist of one partner looking for attention and another partner trying to frustrate that partner. Spencer did not let me rest, and he made sure that we had an argument. I tried my best to avoid the argument, but since he made sure that I had no space to think, I engaged in a very heated argument with him. I made him understand that he was very stupid if he thought it was okay for him to just leave me at the beach and then go wherever he wanted to. Our arguments mainly consisted of back and forth, and then he tried to accuse me of being reckless because I decided to leave the hotel without letting him know. Imagine a man that was not even at the hotel before I left, accusing me of being reckless. I said too many things to him that I am really happy that I finally said my mind. I also told him that I cheated on him because I am not sorry, and I do not want to hide it. I knew that the marriage was over, and I was not even interested in saving it in the first place. At first, Spencer did not believe it, and he thought that I was just lying and trying to play a prank on him, because I was still very angry he left me at the beach. I did not care whether he thought it was true or not. I did not laugh at his jokes, and I told him that I was very serious. When Spencer realized that I was not joking, he punched the wall, then left the hotel. It's been over 24 hours and Spencer has not come back. I've used the opportunity to update you guys, and I will give the last update when I get back to Washington, D.C. I have an early flight and I have to get to bed now. I have also moved to another hotel room and locked the door because I do not trust that Spencer would not try anything with me. I have packed my things and I'll be ready to go tomorrow. Update 2. So when I got back to Washington, D.C., Spencer was not yet back, and I used the opportunity to pack my things and move out of his house. His family was around because they had been staying at the house even while we were on the trip. They did not seem surprised to see me packing my things, and I imagined that they already knew what happened. Or it was either that they were happy to see me go. Either way, I didn't care, and I just packed my things. Before I left, I told them they could now have Spencer to themselves, and I asked them if they were happy that he was single. His mother just laughed in my face and told me that she had never liked me from the beginning, and she was glad that I was no longer with her son. I told her I was glad too, and I needed to throw a celebration for escaping a mommy's boy. After I left the house, I went back to my parents' house and explained everything to them. They did not support the fact that I cheated instead of just walking away, but they were glad that I was finally free from such a marriage. I filed for divorce immediately after that, and Spencer sent back the signed papers barely a few hours after I sent them to him. We only saw each other in court after that, but there was no altercation. I had nothing to say to him, and he had nothing to say to me. Our divorce was finalized 3.5 months ago, and I've gone back to my normal way of life. It's much better now, and I'm back to my jovial self. I'm not sorry for cheating on Spencer because that was my own way of paying him back for the way he treated me. I don't deserve to be desperate for my husband's attention, and I am finally glad that I got out of that marriage. If time turned back again, and I was left in the same position where I had to cheat on Spencer, I would do it in a heartbeat, just like he ditched me at the beach in the heartbeat. I'm super grateful to everyone that has always been and shared their thoughts. I don't think anyone would ever truly understand how hard this would have been without having people to talk to. Thank you so much for listening to me. Goodbye, you all.